Paul. Well, thank you. It's great to be back, Paul. I'm certainly honored to be an NAI Fellow. But as he mentioned, I'm really here in my capacity as chair of the National Science Board. And in a structure that's unique to the National Science Foundation, the NSF director and the National Science Board govern the agency together and work in close partnership. The director and his leadership team manage the agency, and the National Science Board, NSB, provides oversight and guidance to NSF. The board also serves as an independent advisor to the President and Congress on science and engineering policy issues. I hope many of you got to hear NSF Director Sethuraman Panchanathan's talk yesterday. Panch, as he is widely known, is also a fellow of NAI, and he was a member of the National Science Board prior to being named NSF Director. A couple of years ago, he and I, representing the board, were here at the NAI annual meeting and got to meet separately with several of you in a listening session for an effort we were working on called Vision 2030, looking at what it would take for the US to remain the world innovation leader in the year 2030. And thank you so much to NAI for facilitating that session and for those of you who participated. In my talk today, I'm going to highlight the board's Vision 2030 report, and which came out in May of last year, some of the key actions since then and where we're headed. In developing the report, the board noted three trends that impact US leadership: the globalization of science and engineering, the growth of knowledge and technology-intensive industries, and the growing global demand for STEM talent. We spent a year and a half speaking with and listening to stakeholders from around the country, including NAI members, about how to bring about the next era of American innovation leadership. We took that input as well as data from the board's biannual Science and Engineering Indicators report and developed a vision to guide the board, NSF, and the US science and engineering enterprise over the coming decade. As we laid out in the report, for the US to remain at the forefront of innovation, stakeholders, including the government, industry, academia, and professional organizations like NAI, must act in 4 areas. These are better and quickly deliver benefits from research to society, develop STEM talent nationwide to build the workforce America needs to invent the future, expand the geography of innovation so that everyone across the country can participate in and benefit from science and engineering, and foster a global community that attracts international partnerships and talent. Over the last year, NSB has really focused on those first 2 priorities. So let me first address developing STEM talent for America. Talent is the treasure on which US prosperity, health, and security depend, and America's diversity is our greatest strength. To lead in science and engineering in 2030, the US must be a STEM talent powerhouse that uses a 2-pronged strategy of expanding domestic talent while continuing to attract and retain global talent. The board's efforts have primarily focused on developing diverse STEM talent domestically. Demand for people with science and engineering knowledge and skills keep growing. Since 1960, the US science and engineering workforce has grown faster than the overall workforce. Yet, even as STEM skills become more essential, the US is not developing the full potential of its people. For example, based on test scores, US science and math education at the elementary and secondary level is mediocre and stagnant relative to other countries. Over the next decade, our nation must focus heavily on developing America's STEM talent at all educational levels, from skilled technical workers to PhD researchers. Diverse perspectives help to solve big problems and to innovate. And talent exists in every state and community. Yet, despite some progress, women and racial and ethnic minorities remain underrepresented in the science and engineering workforce relative to their proportions in the US population, an issue that the board highlighted in the Vision 2030 report as the missing millions. So looking at this graph, it compares the number of people in various demographic groups currently in the science and engineering workforce, those are the solid figures, to the estimated number of people in those groups in the 2030 US population, the outlined figures. So going down the 4 lines starting at the top, for the workforce to represent the US population, the board estimates that the number of women must nearly double, Black or African Americans must more than double, Hispanic or Latinos must triple, and American Indian or Alaskan Natives must quadruple. And these disparities between those in the workforce and those in the population start early. Data from the board's elementary and secondary STEM education report show large performance differences across demographic groups. Vertically on this chart are 8th grade math assessment scores, showing that, except for Asian students, students from racial and ethnic minority groups score lower than their white peers on standardized tests. And then horizontally, the chart compares students of different socioeconomic status as measured through their eligibility to receive free and reduced price school lunches, with the scores for those eligible shown on the left-hand side of the chart and those not eligible on the right, illustrating the lower performance of those eligible. About half of all US public school students attend schools where the majority of students are eligible for the National School Lunch Program. Our inability to effectively educate large sections of our population in STEM will limit future employment options for many people and weaken US competitiveness. In the last year, NSB has begun to address and will be spending more time on a second priority area, delivering benefits from research. We need to enhance the return to US taxpayers from these federal investments and empower the nation's businesses and entrepreneurs to compete globally. Delivering benefits from research means speeding the translation from discovery to innovation, encouraging the exchange of people, ideas, and expertise across government, university, and industry, and doing so in a way that invests in domestic talent, expands science and engineering capacity in all states, and leads to a more inclusive enterprise. Since we released Vision 2030, we have a new administration and a new Congress and a new NSF director. In part due to inputs from the board and NSF, Congress has proposed once-in-a-generation legislation for NSF and for research and innovation broadly, and the new administration likewise has new priorities. You may have seen this slide yesterday from Panch's talk, but as he pointed out, there's a great alignment between the board's Vision 2030, NSF's vision with 3 pillars, and the administration priorities. The board, in close collaboration with NSF Director Panch and his team, has been working to advance our shared goals. For example, over the last year, the board hosted a series of public panels focused on developing domestic STEM talent. So including panels on the impacts of the pandemic on women in STEM, the Black experience in STEM, factors that affect retention in graduate school, lessons from minority-serving institutions in retaining students, and the important role of community colleges in developing STEM talent. These panels helped inform and influence NSF and policymakers, and through the American Rescue Plan, NSF has deployed more than $230 million to support people in the research community who are most vulnerable and heavily impacted by the pandemic, including people at career transition points, those with family care responsibilities, primarily women, and disproportionately affected groups and institutions, including minority-serving institutions and in states that are part of EPSCoR, the established program to stimulate competitive research. In the policy arena, the House and Senate have passed bills that emphasize 3 of the 4 Vision 2030 goals. It's exciting to see bipartisan enthusiasm in Congress for substantively enhancing and investing in NSF as part of a broad push to strengthen U.S. science and engineering and competitiveness. And NSF is on the cusp of creating a new directorate aimed at delivering benefits from research by speeding up the cycle of discovery and innovation so that solutions to societal challenges and technology are available to people more quickly. While the ultimate scope and parameters of the new Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate, called TIP for short, will be determined by the final legislation passed by Congress and signed by the President. The plan for TIP is to bring exciting new approaches to NSF's existing research and innovation programs. A few ways that NSF hopes to do that is to accelerate public-private partnerships, to launch new NSF entrepreneurial fellowships to strengthen the impact of NSF's Innovation Corps, or I-Corps program, which I hope many of you have taken advantage of, and to enhance the NSF lab-to-market platform, to enter into partnerships, especially with industry, to accelerate the transition of discoveries from the laboratory to the marketplace for society benefits. For example, the SBIR and STTR programs, which I expect you are familiar with, give small businesses and startups the chance to do research and development on the feasibility of new concepts or innovations that could become new products, processes, or services. The board is engaging closely with Ponch and his team as NSF makes plans to stand up the new TIP structure, and will work with NSF to demonstrate the agency's measurable progress in delivering research benefits to address national and strategic goals. Over the coming year, the board will also continue to focus on developing U.S. STEM talent, and will begin to focus more on the 3rd vision goal to expand the geography of innovation. For example, we'll look at how NSF might reimagine EPSCoR to broaden research and education opportunities and the economic benefits that come with them across the country. The NSB released Vision 2030 when we were barely 6 weeks into a worldwide pandemic. At the same time, our country has been grappling with difficult issues around race and social justice. We are clearly in a moment of change, shaped by hardships, but also full of possibilities. It's a moment when Americans and the world can directly see the critical importance and impact of science and basic research. It's a moment that offers all of us an opportunity for introspection, re-examination of past practices and assumptions, and reimagining what the future could look like, including the future of our nation's science and engineering enterprise. It's a moment we need all hands on deck, and I know this community of inventors will play an instrumental role as we work together to ensure our country is still an innovation leader in 2030. Thank you so much, and we might have time for a question or two if somebody has one.